I want to start today by asking you to do something a little weird. Just look at the phone sitting on your desk, or maybe the laptop you're working on. Don't turn it on, just look at it. What's the main sense you associate with that thing?
It's got to be vision, right? I mean, it's a screen, it's pixels, it's that glowing logo, the brushed metal. We are so trained to think of these devices as, visual objects.
Exactly. We think of Apple as a company of optics, high-res cameras, retina displays, all that. But I have a stack of research here today that, well, it suggests we've been looking at this all wrong. Or maybe we haven't been listening.
I know where you're going with this. You've been digging into that new column from MMR.
I have, yeah. It's titled Steve Jobs and Jonathan Ive, Resonance of Sound and Design. And it throws a massive curveball at the standard history of tech. The whole premise is this. We think of Apple as a computer company that got into music. But this deep dive argues that at its DNA level, it was always a music company.
And it sounds a bit like a marketing slogan at first, doesn't it? We are the music makers. But when you actually start to peel back the layers, especially the relationship between Jobs and Jony Ive, it stops being a metaphor. The argument is that they were actually trying to fuse musical composition with industrial engineering. They were treating hardware like a song.
So that's our mission today. We're not talking processor speeds, no camera megapixels. We are going to unpack how the collaboration between these two was really about creating a culture where, a circuit board has rhythm and a laptop has harmony.
And the core insight from the source is so compelling. It argues that for Jobs and Ive, design wasn't just visual, it was auditory. They treated a product like a musical composition, thinking about rhythm, harmony, and, crucially, silence.
Okay, let's unpack this, because when I hear design, I'm thinking, round corners, font choices. You're saying they were designing for our ears?
In a way, yes. Metaphorically, but also literally. To understand why your iPhone feels the way it does, you have to go back to who these guys were. We have to look at them not as CEOs, but as audiophiles.
But they were audiophiles from totally different planets,
Well,
right?
completely different solar systems, yeah.
Let's start with Steve, the California soul. We know the image, the turtleneck, the jeans, that whole vibe. But the source highlights something really specific about his living room that I hadn't realized.
Right. This comes from the Walter Isaacson biography. So picture Steve Jobs in his 20s. He's getting rich, running Apple, but his house is practically empty. He's super picky. But the one thing he invested in, the stereo.
And not just any stereo. He had vacuum tube amplifiers.
Yes. High-end vacuum tubes.
Okay, hold on. I'm not an audio engineer, but I know vacuum tubes are ancient. Like, before transistors, before microchips. Why would the guy inventing the digital future be obsessed with that?
That is the million-dollar question. Because technically, solid-state tech, chips and transistors, it's better. It's precise. It's clean. Vacuum tubes get hot. They degrade. And they introduce a tiny bit of distortion.
Distortion. Wait, you want zero distortion, don't you?
In engineering, yes. In music, not always. That tube distortion, it adds what are called even-order harmonics. It makes the sound feel warm. It feels thick. It feels human.
So Jobs, the guy building the machines, was obsessed with the imperfections of the analog world because they felt warmer.
He was chasing soul. There's this great quote from him in 1982. He was talking about Bob Dylan, of course. He said, "Dylan's words have a soul. That is not the sound of a machine."
That is not the sound of a machine, and he's in the business of building machines.
Precisely, and that's the tension. For Jobs, music was the bridge. It was the only way to close the gap between cold circuitry and actual humanity. He wanted his computers to feel like a Dylan track. Maybe a little rough, but deeply emotional.
So that's the emotional side. Then you have Jony Ive. I always picture him in a white room. Very quiet, very British. The Bauhaus rhythm.
Yeah, he is very grounded in that rationalist industrial design tradition.
We hear Bauhaus thrown around a lot. For anyone listening who's not a designer, what does that really mean?
Think form follows function. It's a German design school. Minimalist. No decoration. If a button doesn't do anything, get rid of it. Clean lines. It's usually associated with this very sterile visual perfection.
Right. So you'd expect him to listen to, minimalist classical music.
Or Kraftwerk, maybe. But the source points out he was just as obsessed with sound as Jobs, but his taste, well, it might surprise you. He was on a podcast in 2024, Life in 7 Songs.
Oh, I missed that one. What was on his playlist?
It was not minimal techno. He listed U2's 40. And get this, The Temptations' Papa was a Rolling Stone.
No way. So Jony Ive getting down to the Temptations.
It seems contradictory, right? But listen to how he explains it. He talks about the thickness and the temperature of analog sound. And funk and soul music have that thickness. It's dense, layered. It's got a heavy bass line you can feel.
I love that idea of sound temperature. It's such a designer way to talk about music.
It really is. It proves his ear was tuned to the nuances of material. He saw sound as a material, like aluminum or glass. It had weight. It had texture. In fact, after he left Apple, his design collective, Love From, collaborated with Lin in 2023.
LN, the super high-end audio brand.
The best of the best. And they redesigned the Lin Sondek LP12 turntable. It was minimalist, precise, but totally respectful of that analog mechanism. So you have these two guys crashing into each other, Jobs with his emotional soul, and Ive with his obsession with the texture of sound.
And when those two philosophies collide, what do you get? You get 2001. You get the iPod.
The iPod. This is where the theory stops being a theory and becomes a real product.
We all remember the marketing. 1,000 songs in your pocket. That was pure Jobs.
Totally. That was the headline. But the hardware, that was Ive. And the source argues that the click wheel wasn't just a navigation tool. It was a tactile interaction with the music.
Oh, absolutely. I still miss the click wheel. There was something so satisfying about it.
Well, think about the problem. Digital music is invisible. It has no weight. You can't hold an MP3 file like you hold a vinyl record. It feels cheap. It feels like nothing.
Right. So how do you give nothing a sense of value?
You create a physical interaction. The click wheel wasn't just a button you pressed. It was an instrument you played. You had to perform this circular motion and remember that sound.
That little clicking noise as you scrolled through the list.
Exactly. It gave you this audio feedback that said, you are moving through something real. It bridged the gap between the digital file and the user. It gave digital music a physical body.
And then came the software, iTunes, 2003.
And this was the revolution. We have to remember, at the time, Napster was huge. Everyone was just stealing music. The industry was in a complete panic.
I remember it felt like the end of the music business.
And Jobs predicted that the music industry would be saved by software.
Which sounds so arrogant. I, the computer guy, will save rock and roll.
But he was right. And his motivation wasn't just about profit. He believed legally delivering digital music was, and this is his quote, the greatest respect for musicians. He knew that if artists didn't get paid, the soul he loved, the Dylans, the Beatles, it would all just stop happening.
So they basically transitioned the world from the physical record to the digital era, but tried desperately not to lose the soul of the experience.
That's the key. They were trying to keep the ghost in the machine.
Okay, here's where the article gets really interesting for me. It suggests they didn't just like music, they actually used musical structures to design computers. Like the way a song is built influenced how a laptop was built.
This is such a fascinating layer of their partnership. Jobs loved the repetition and order in Bach. And if you look at the internal components of early Macs or the grid of icons on the iPhone, it's very Baroque.
Baroque. That feels like a stretch.
Is it? Think about Bach. It's mathematical, it's structured, it follows a rigid tempo. Jobs wanted the circuit boards, things nobody would ever see, to have that same ordered beauty. No chaos inside the case. He wanted a composition.
And Ive. What was his contribution to the structure?
I've focused on leaving function within silence.
Leaving function within silence. That sounds very zen. What does that mean for a computer?
Think about the Power Mac G4 Cube from 2000.
Ah, the toaster. The beautiful, clear toaster that cracked.
It had its flaws, sure, but look at the intent. It was fanless.
Which is a nightmare for cooling. Why do that?
To achieve silence. It was suspended in this clear acrylic shell. It had an internal light that pulsed. The source describes it as standing like a silent speaker. It embodied silence in order to listen to sound. They compromised on performance just so the machine wouldn't hum.
So the computer itself was designed to be quiet so that the music or your own thoughts could be loud.
Exactly. It was a canvas of silence. But then let's jump to the MacBook Pro, around 2006. This is where the chassis as instrument idea comes in.
The aluminum unibody. I just thought that was to make it strong and light.
It is strong.
Yeah.
But it's also acoustic. In an interview, I've said, the chassis itself shakes the sound.
Wait, so the laptop case is a speaker cabinet?
In a way, yes. They didn't just shove speakers into a hole. They calculated how the aluminum body would resonate. Much like the wood body of a violin resonates the strings, the shape and material of the computer amplify and color the audio.
So the computer is the instrument?
The computer is the instrument.
That is wild. I never thought about my laptop case acting like a guitar body. And of course, they gave us GarageBand in 2004.
Which really fulfilled that promise. Before that, computers were for spreadsheets, maybe consuming media. GarageBand made the Mac a tool for creating. It democratized music production.
So you have this incredible era of harmony, but sadly we know Jobs passed away, and I've eventually left Apple. And the source suggests their paths kind of diverged philosophically.
It's a really poetic divergence. They both wanted to free people through music, but they chose different ways to do it. Jobs, toward the end, was all about the cloud.
iCloud, streaming, music everywhere.
Right. The vision was that music should flow like water. It's an extension of dropping the needle on a record, but with zero physical limits. He wanted the friction to disappear. Ive went the other way. Through love from, he went back to the tactile, the turntable. He seems to be pushing back against that ephemeral nature of the cloud. He wants the weight, the ritual, the click, and the thud of the needle.
It's like Jobs went to the sky, and I've went back to the earth.
That's a beautiful way to put it. But they are still connected by that original philosophy. And there's a quote from Ive, after Jobs passed, that sums up their whole relationship.
What did he say?
He described Jobs as someone who looked at products the way one listens to music.
What does that actually imply, looking at a product like music?
Well, most people look at a product and see utility. Does it work? Is it fast? Jobs saw rhythm and harmony. He looked at a circuit board and didn't just see pathways. He saw the flow of the composition.
That explains so much. It explains why the inside of the computer had to look as good as the outside, because even if you can't see it, if it's ugly, it disrupts the harmony. It's like playing a wrong note.
Precisely. I've even calls design a sound-building act. It's a process of composition.
So what does this all mean for us today? We're living in the world they built. We're surrounded by these rectangles.
We are. And even though Jobs is gone and Ive has moved on, the subconscious impact is everywhere. I mean, think about the startup chime of a Mac.
EONG.
It's iconic. It's an F-sharp major chord. It's not a beep. It's not a buzzer. Or the click of the iPhone keyboard, the little swoosh of a sent email. These aren't just random sound effects.
No, they feel very deliberate.
They are the lingering results of this collaboration. They are the music of the operating system. The source argues this design of silence, punctuated by these specific harmonious cues, is how they humanize the technology.
It's the soundtrack of our digital lives, basically. It tells us the machine is friendly.
It tells us the machine is working with us, not just processing data.
It's interesting to see where Joni Ive is now with Love From. They have a manifesto, right?
They do, and it connects perfectly back to where we started. The statement reads, "We design for love, not for markets."
We design for love, not for markets.
That sounds very uncorporate. It sounds like something a struggling artist would say, not a global design firm.
It's very Jobsian, though. It echoes that idea that if you make something with soul, if you put the same care into a product that a musician puts into a song, the market will follow. Just as music puts a soul into technology, this philosophy continues to play the sound of love.
It's a nice thought.
Yeah.
That the phone in my pocket isn't just a slab of glass and silicon designed to serve me ads, but something designed with, well, love. Or at least with harmony.
It changes how you look at the device, doesn't it? It stops being a tool and starts being a medium.
It really does. You know, we promised a surprising premise at the start, and I think we've landed there. Apple is a music company because they treat their products like songs.
And they treat their users like an audience listening to a performance. So here's a thought for you to take with you today. We started by looking at your phone. I want you to do that again. But this time, interact with it. Turn up the volume. Lock the screen. Listen to that click.
Is it a noise or is it a note?
Exactly. When you get a notification, ding, what are you actually hearing? Are you hearing a machine alerting you to data? Or are you hearing a composed interaction designed to make technology feel human?
I think if you listen closely enough, you might hear the rhythm that Steve and Joni started playing 20 years ago.
It's a duet that changed the world. Thanks for diving in with us. Listen a little closer to the world around you today.
Goodbye, everyone.
See you next time.